Hey everyone, John here, and I am always hearing Pokopia get compared to Minecraft or Animal Crossing, and it drives me nuts, because let's all say this at once. It is actually Dragon Quest Builders! Yeah, we all said it! Builders was originally started by Square Enix, and then Koei Tecmo took over with the second game, with many staff members from the original making their way to Koei Tecmo. And one pretty huge fella is Takuto Edogawa, one of the directors of Builders 2, and also one of the directors of Pokopia. But it's not just the staff involved, it's pretty obvious just looking at them that Pokopia is basically Builders 3. So let's just go over the premise a moment. Dragon Quest Builders 1 is post-apocalyptic Dragon Quest 1, and Dragon Quest Builders 2 is post-apocalyptic Dragon Quest 2. Now that's already very familiar. These are story-based games where you get these small, ruined villages, and you build them back up and slowly accumulate a civilization, trying to cater to their needs. There's plot, there's development, you're going out into the wilderness to find materials and bring them back to your base to build new things. I am basically describing Pokopia right now, and here's the second layer of it. These are all basically levels, so when you finish with one area, you then go on to a brand new area and build that back up. Again, same in Dragon Quest Builders, same in Pokopia. The only major difference is Dragon Quest Builders has combat, whereas Pokopia has no combat at all. In fact, in Builders 1, at the end of each chapter, you defend your town against an army onslaught, and they can just outright destroy your town permanently. And you've got to build it back up or just live in those ruins. So you can lose a lot at the end of those chapters. The combat's definitely not the highlight of Dragon Quest Builders, it's just kind of fine. But really, you've got to see monsters as material sources rather than just being enemies to defeat. They're kind of like moving blocks, if you think of combat that way. But then there's also the mechanical similarities, which are pretty much the same across the board. You can cycle through different abilities like Water Gun or Cut in Pokopia. In Dragon Quest Builders, you can cycle through a hammer to break things or a glove to pick things up. Very similar mechanics, very similar UI. In Pokopia, you can enable a quick menu with your pockets, which is very similar to something like Minecraft. Dragon Quest Builders 2 is the exact same, and then there's also your broader bag in the menu, which again is much like Pokopia. Only Pokopia goes for more of an Animal Crossing UI with this menu. But if your bag is full, you can also make storage boxes. Again, the exact same between the two. They function the exact same. And again, the UI here is much more like New Horizons than it is Dragon Quest Builders, but the functionality is the same. And when you learn something new, you get an exclamation mark and you learn a new recipe, which is almost one-to-one the same. When you hold down the ZL button, you strafe exactly the same between the two games. You can use this to stay in a line while placing blocks. You can look below, you can look above. Though Pokopia has one more element here, where you can tap the X and B buttons while holding ZL, and you can actually go above another level in placing things. So not just directly above you, but the space above the space directly above you. And there's one more wrinkle to Pokopia as well, where mouse mode can just place really far away from you, which is something Builders 2 has no equivalent to. So Pokopia isn't just Builders 3 because it looks kind of similar. It is Builders 3. It's made by the same people, it's mechanically an evolution with the exact same fundamentals, but it definitely goes further than Dragon Quest Builders when it comes to the NPCs themselves. There's much more personality to the Pokemon, and it is very rewarding to try and cater to their needs. Another big difference too is both games give you a free roam island that you can just build on whenever you want to. But in Pokopia, you can actually have a shared island where people can build together, even if the host isn't there. So you can all build together at the exact same time if you want to, or the host can be offline and anyone can jump in and build there too. So it's like a big shared online island, very much like a Minecraft server. And Builders 2 has nothing like that. Builders 2 has regular co-op, we have to be online at the exact same time, but this is a different beast entirely. But one advantage Builders 2 does have when it comes to online is there's a big level browsing system where you can just look at a bunch of the best community picks and go straight to them. There's a code system too, but this is just such an elegant way to visit islands without having to research first. And Pokopia doesn't have that. You've got to find codes elsewhere. And right now there just aren't that many codes to visit because people are playing the main game rather than making a custom island. So this is something we won't really see until a while later, Although there is a Pokemon Company island, which is pretty cool. Gives you a nice glimpse of later features in the game if you've not played the entire thing yet. And it definitely runs a lot better than a custom island from Dragon Quest Builders 2, where even on the Switch 2, it is dropping a whole lot of frames. And there's so many more similarities to mention, like the way that water works. Just breaking blocks will let a stream of water flood out, or placing a block will stop that water flow. The water controls are basically the exact same, like bobbing out of the water. You don't drown as fast in Builders 2, but it plays the same. There's all the farming elements which Builders 2 had and Builders 1 didn't really have. Basically, if you're playing Pokopia and you think to yourself, this is a really cool mechanic, double guess and say, did Dragon Quest Builders do this first? Because the answer is probably yeah. And this isn't to say Pokopia has nothing of its own, because it's an excellent game, it's a lot of fun, it does evolve the formula that Builders set. But I do think once you're done with Pokopia, consider going back to Dragon Quest Builders 1 or 2, because they give you a different flavor of a very similar experience. And Builders 2 specifically is one of my favorite games on the Switch 1, so I was not surprised at all when Pokopia got rave reviews. I was more surprised that people were surprised, given how good Dragon Quest Builders is, but it just doesn't carry the same legacy in the West compared to what it would have in Japan. And by the way, the custom levels in Japan are absolutely wild, so I cannot wait to see what people do with Pokopia once a bit of time has passed. But to give Pokopia some praise a moment, because it sounds like I'm whining, I promise I'm not whining. If you give me a game that plays just like Dragon Quest Builders, I am not whining. That's one of my favorite games of the last era, and this is basically a third game. And they've given so much more personality to this because every Pokemon is distinct and distinguished in a way that no NPCs really were in Dragon Quest Builders. It feels far more cozy to build a town and have all these residents that you get to know, especially because you know a lot of them already from playing other Pokemon games or other Pokemon media. And it's captured my house in a way that Dragon Quest Builders never did. My wife has played this game more than me, and I've played it a whole bunch myself. And my daughter, my 5-year-old daughter, is playing it. She just goes to a little corner of my town and builds little hotels and houses out of blocks. And she hasn't really shown that kind of interest in Minecraft in quite the same way. A little bit, but not quite like this. And if I gave her Dragon Quest Builders, I don't think that the darker tones would really appeal to her. Because even though Pokopia is also post-apocalyptic and everything's in ruin, it's still got this colorful and cheery tone. Dragon Quest Builders had to achieve that dark and gloomy look to make you know that it's post-apocalyptic. But Pokopia, I think, still achieves that desolate tone while being very fun-looking. It's a very hard line to balance, and they did it excellently. So I can see why people are definitely a lot more drawn to this game, beyond just it being Pokemon, which is already a big draw. But the fact that we have a third Builders game, and it's as good as it is nothing to whine about. This is one of my favorite games in a long time, and I'm struggling to put it down, and it's so cool that it's captured my household. That kind of thing doesn't happen, and cool. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Let's give a bit more respect to Dragon Quest Builders because it's always been fantastic. I've done a podcast with Brandon Jones on Axel the Blood God for Dragon Quest Builders for those curious. That was a lot of fun. And I will see you next time. Bye-bye, everybody.